We have got a very fun topic for all of you today. We're going to be talking about Star Wars. We're not going to be going into the Daisy Ridley stuff. We're not going to be going into Grogu and Rey. We're not even going to be talking about the recent rumors, which very much sound like things I've been hearing that came out on the Overlord DVD, aka Doomcock, YouTube channel yesterday when he had some information about Kathleen Kennedy's future. We're not going to touch any of that right now. Joining us is Lauren Connor from That Park Place. In fact, Lauren is wearing a That Park Place cap. Very snazzy. But we're going to go into something that Lauren brought up a couple of days ago on a video that when he started into it, I realized this was a topic that has not yet been discussed, that needs to be discussed, and which I think could potentially be a roadmap for how we get to the end of this saga that we're exploring on the Disney Plus shows for Star Wars. Let me say this too. I know a lot of people are over Star Wars. I know they're tired of Star Wars. I know they're out and they're not coming back. At the same time, I also know that despite how bad the sequel trilogy was in the minds of many, and despite how fervently some are against going back to those characters, it was The Mandalorian that honestly brought some people back and they said, you know what, I'm willing to give this a chance. And it's a shame to me that Lucasfilm and the individuals not connected with those productions did something so drastic with Gina Carano that jettisoned all the goodwill that fans had started to come back with. So as we have this topic, this conversation today, I want people to understand, I get it. I know that there are a lot of people who they're just done with Star Wars. But I do want to explore even potentially what could have been when Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni sat down and started road mapping this out. And Lauren is the guy to do it. Lauren is, in my opinion, one of the smartest Star Wars aficionados out there. And like I said, Lauren, when you were talking about this, I just began to think, oh my gosh, he's onto something. This really could be what the original roadmap was and what they're still trying to do, even despite Kathleen Kennedy and the rest of Lucasfilm putting roadblock after roadblock up. And so the topic today is going to be the Darksaber theory. Lauren, before we get into all of this that you sort of understand and know and can lead us through, tell us first, for those who don't know, what is the Darksaber according to Star Wars lore and canon?
So the Darksaber is a weapon that was created by the first Mandalorian Jedi in the new canon, Tor Vizsla. And the Vizslas are an important clan in the Mandalorians. They have actually been in the old EU. They are now in the new canon. They have always been what I would call orthodox Mandalorians. They adhere strictly to the warrior code. That is part of where Death Watch comes from. The Vizslas have always been associated with Death Watch. In the new canon, this is kind of important because in the old EU, there had been Mandalorian Jedi in the past. In the new canon, this was a unique individual who was a Mandalorian who joined the Jedi Order. Upon his death, the Darksaber remained in the Jedi Temple. And that didn't sit well with the remaining Mandalorians. They raided the temple, they took it back, and it ended up in the hands of the Vizsla clan. That popped up in the Clone Wars. This is pre-Disney continuity, when George was still involved. Eventually, that passed into the hands of Darth Maul, then going by Maul when he killed, I believe it was pre-Vizsla, if I remember correctly. And then he took over leadership of the Mandalorians for a time. Later on, it was stolen by Sabine Wren when she discovered it in his little cave on Dathomir. She intended to use it to try to unite the disparate Mandalorian clans, passing it over eventually to Bo-Katan. We don't know what happened after that because it hasn't been shown. The next time that we saw it, it was in the hands of Moff Gideon. So my guess is that Gideon was aware of the fact that you could not simply obtain the Darksaber and use it to rule. He was aware of the ancient traditions that required that it be won through combat. My guess is that he challenged Bo-Katan, defeated her, took the Darksaber, and then led Mandalore as regent from that point. That's why Bo-Katan wanted it back so fiercely. It's why she insisted on facing Gideon. That was the one condition that she had on joining Din Djarin on his mission. And Din Djarin, not knowing that there was anything associated with this, ended up in combat with him, won the Darksaber, or possibly Gideon through the fight, just to create additional conflict, and that's where we're at now.
Lauren, do you have notes that you're using to know all of this?
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever wonder why it is that I say that if Pablo Hidalgo ever retires or resigns or is removed, Lauren Connor is the man. Lucasfilm. Look at this guy. He's incredible. All right. So, Lauren, I know you want to be humble, but I'm telling you, you're amazing at this stuff. Lauren, for a lot of the normal people out there who just tuned into The Mandalorian, they don't follow Star Wars to an intricate level, the Darksaber just seemed like something really cool. What are the properties of this weapon in lore? Does it have any kind of special abilities? Does it grant anybody special powers by wielding it? What is it that makes this thing so special in terms of others wanting to have it?
Well, first of all, it's analogous to the old EU Mask of Mandalore, which was kind of where they took this new canon version of this, is that you have to win the Darksaber through combat. It used to work the same way when somebody wanted to lead the Mandalorian clans. They had to challenge the current Mandalore, and if they were successful, they would then take the old Mandalore's mask, reforge it into their own particular image, and then lead the Mandalorian clans that way. In fact, in the Tales of the Jedi comic series, that was done by Ula Keldroma, who defeated Mandalore and then led the Mandalorian clans at that point. So there's precedent for this kind of a story. In the Book of Boba Fett, in the Mandalorian episodes, and I believe a little bit with Rebels and Sabine as well, they indicated that the major special property of the Darksaber is that it works against the wielder if they are trying to impose their will upon it. And I think kind of where I was going with some of the theories that I had is that some of the themes that they could be exploring are restoration. There are parallels that have been introduced between the Mandalorian clans and the Jedi, in the sense that they are both warriors of different types of viewpoints. And the Mandalorians developed a lot of their technology to counter the advantages that the abilities of the Jedi give them. The Jedi Order fell, and I think a lot of that is because they had lost their empathy. They had become more political figures than what their intended mission was. It clouded their vision. It left them weak and vulnerable to Palpatine's depredations. Likewise, the Mandalorians have been absolutely splintered. Some of this is a retcon from decisions that George had made during the making of the Clone Wars. It led to lots of different factions of Mandalorians. I consider Death Watch what I would call orthodox Mandalorians. You have Bo-Katan's faction that you might call reformist Mandalorians. You have some of Sabine's clan that might be neo-Mandalorians. But the Armorer said that essentially when Bo-Katan tried to unite the Mandalorian clans with the Darksaber not having been won through combat, that she cursed Mandalore, and they've experienced nothing but sorrow ever since. So they need a leader that can unite them. You wouldn't expect a Mandalorian to join the Jedi. They tend to be a warlike culture. So that one ever did is kind of a unique and interesting fact. And I suspect that the Darksaber was constructed the way that it was in order to impose that kind of balance upon the wielder, to make sure that they remained in line with Jedi ideals and only wielded the sword in a purpose that was in alignment with the light. So because both of these cultures have kind of a claim on the Darksaber, I think that what's interesting about this is that The Jedi can learn from the Mandalorian culture that attachment through family, which is very important to Mandalorians, is something that could be allowed and keeps the Jedi grounded. Likewise, the Jedi can learn that um, there are different viewpoints in how power can be wielded. And some of that, I think, is also about separating the Jedi from the will of the Senate. By doing that, at some point in the past, the Jedi became inherently political. One thing that's interesting about the Mandalorians in the new canon is that they're almost kind of not separatist exactly, but under Bo-Katan's sister, Satine, under Duchess Satine. She wanted to be pacifistic, which was antithetical to Mandalorian culture before. She wanted to stay out of galactic events as much as possible, and there's something from that maybe the Jedi can take too.
Now, Lauren, I know that a lot of people, again, that they've given up on Star Wars, but part of what fascinates me about all of this is that there may have been some true genius at the beginning of trying this Disney Plus endeavor, right? When they brought together Favreau and Filoni, that there may have been some genius there. And that genius may still exist, whether or not people watch it. And that's, a lot of that is completely separate from either Favreau or Filoni. So you have a theory that I think is remarkable about how the Darksaber may have been used as part of that roadmap going forward, and how all of these Disney Plus shows in whatever saga this was were intended to end. Can you share with the audience where you think this was going and may still be going in terms of the Darksaber and how it would be used?
Well, my belief has always been that the Mandalorian, the title refers to Grogu, not Din Djarin. My suspicion has been that the finale of the show will be the funeral of Din Djarin, and you will see Grogu as the new Mandalore recounting the story to the followers of his clan as to how he joined the Mandalorian clans, took Din Djarin as his surrogate father, and later became the Mandalore. And so that jumps you ahead in time a little bit. It also, the Darksaber is kind of a touchstone, a little bit like the old Mask of Mandalore. It's something that pops up many times in ancient history. Now it's in the current history. It's something that could be used going forward as another touchstone for other characters and other timelines. It's a legendary weapon like Excalibur, and you pay attention to those things in mythology. If I'm right about both the Mandalorians and the Jedi needing a form of reformation, this also ties into the rebuilding of the Jedi Order. And I suspect that this is kind of why I think Grogu isn't really done with Luke. I was thinking about this while we were talking the other night about the decision to bring Grogu back to Din Djarin and how we didn't really feel like that was the right decision to make. But after we got done recording, I started thinking about the hero's journey. And if the story of The Mandalorian really is about Grogu, then what's just happened in the hero's journey cycle is that was the first refusal of the call. And in a mythological sense, that actually makes more sense. I'm not sure I like it. I think I would have maybe preferred that they still had a little bit more time separation. But if that's the case, Grogu's refused the call for now. But he'll eventually end up on both the Mandalorian and the Jedi path again.
And you think that possibly in the years to come, that could be, I know we said we wouldn't discuss this, but that possibly years from now, that is Grogu with Rey, do we think?
Well, I don't think any of that's necessarily a given. It's my own opinion on the recent rumors is that I believe Disney's exploring it. I think they know the brand is damaged. I think that they're doing all of the market research that they possibly can to try and figure out what do we do with this. I don't think they're necessarily committed to anything unless there's more going on that we haven't heard. I think that's a direction they could go. I would much prefer that they not do that.
Do you
So
believe, Lauren, that when this idea of the Darksaber and Grogu potentially being the Mandalorian, that, I mean, what a switch that would be. I mean, that would be a fabulous switch if the whole trick was that the Mandalorian in the, in the title is referring to Grogu. Wow. Do you think that somehow that Dave Filoni, because you would think that he's the one who's had to have been sort of architecting this, because I know that Favreau, really gets the directing side of this, but that is deep level Star Wars. So I would think that Dave Filoni is pulling that in terms of crafting that lore. Do you think in any way that was being done to try somehow to explain the sequel trilogy, or do you think this is completely separate from that?
to me, I think it's separate. I mean, I have a hard time seeing how any of that would connect directly to the sequel trilogy. But we have seen references that have been made in the show, things that could lead to the sequel trilogy and may still do so. If they do, my feeling is that's going to poison the well. That will kill the Mandalorian as surely as anything could. But that's why I think they've held off on making any solid announcements. They haven't moved forward with any films yet. They're doing research. They know the Mandalorian works, or at least has worked. But like we've said before, if they keep trying to shove the sequel trilogy in there through these little references and things, and if they try and ever make a definitive tie there, they will destroy it.
Gotcha. All right, Lauren. I think it's a fabulous theory. I think that, honestly, I think it's on the money. I mean, I think you have got this thing figured out. Of course, things can change, and writing can change, and sometimes it's those external forces that force writing to go in ways that were never originally intended, such as having to throw away Rangers of the New Republic and other things like that. Where do you think? Yeah, go for it.
One other thing I would say here is that this is pure speculation on my part. I have no sources, nothing. This is just me thinking, gosh, if I was going to do something, what would I do? So this is more fun speculation than anything.
Sure. But it makes perfect sense. That's the thing about it. I mean, it really does. The idea of connecting these two very different groups that have been at each other through Grogu, through that item.
There is one other thing that I would mention about this, and that is that in the Clone Wars, there was a story arc that involved Maul and his brother Savage Opress taking on Darth Sidious on, I think they were on Coruscant at the time. I may be wrong about that. There were murals that were seen in that episode that depicted Mandalorian battles against the Jedi. And they've mentioned that. They've never returned to that. But that was likely a depiction of the Mandalorian Wars. The Mandalorian Wars were heavily foundational to the Knights of the Old Republic series. Those stories are no longer canon. We don't know what the Mandalorian Wars fully entailed in the new canon. But my best bet is that's centering on the Mandalorians retaking the Darksaber from the Jedi Temple.
When it comes to Star Wars knowledge, facts, theories, and lore, I think Lauren Connor is the man. And I count it as a true blessing that we have you with that Park Place. I think you are just a tremendous asset, but not just for us. But I think content like this is awesome for people who love Star Wars and who maybe they're just feeling melancholy right now. Maybe they're feeling a little down about the entire franchise. It's been a rough go, but just chatting with you and just hearing you expound on all of this lore and all of the content, all of the threads that are possible if this franchise is ever given to somebody at the helm who cares about it and will take care of it and grow it. I'm excited about that future. There is a future post Kathleen Kennedy and post whatever this Lucasfilm phase is. And when that next saga begins, I hope they're listening to Lauren Connor, and I mean that. So, Lauren, thank you for being here. And any final words before we hop out?
No, I would just say that for those folks who might be curious, I had put up a poll on my Twitter a while ago. I had forsworn Disney Plus after they fired Chapek and brought Iger back, but I decided I'd better float a poll and see, do you actually want me to resubscribe to watch Mando Season 3? Because right now I'm boycotting Disney pretty heavily. And I was surprised to see that people did want me to resubscribe. They're telling me that's my job. I'm supposed to watch it so I can tell them if they shouldn't watch it. So my plan is to resubscribe. I will be reviewing at least The Mandalorian Season 3. I hope it's good.
I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, there will be videos right here on this channel with Lorne. We will be reviewing The Mandalorian together, because there is no better mind when it comes to Star Wars than this man. So, Lauren, thank you for being here. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed the content today. If you did, click like, share, subscribe, and stick it to those algorithms. Click it, and I'm talking about that notification bell. We covet your comments wherever you are. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.